You ever been erased while still breathing? Because that's exactly what my family did to me on the night they called it a celebration. They handed me a one-way ticket, forged my name on a student transfer, and told everyone I'd moved to Paris for a dream I never chose. While they toasted to independence, I was folding barf bags on a 4 a.m. shift in Oregon. They didn't lose me. They replaced me with a version that looked better in their brochures. I spent 5 years rebuilding in silence, collecting evidence, buying back control piece by piece, until I had the one thing they didn't expect: the majority vote. At the spring gala, I took the mic they never meant for me to hold and ended the story they rehearsed for years without raising my voice. One slide, one name, one truth. If you've ever felt invisible to your own family, don't scroll. Because if you stay silent too long, they'll keep rewriting who you are. Before we dive into the story, if you're enjoying these meaningful stories, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on more. Now let's start the story together. They called it a celebration. I'd spent all afternoon trying to decide what to wear, finally settling on a navy dress I'd outgrown just slightly. My mother had told me the restaurant was something simple, nothing extravagant, but I knew from the reservation details that it wasn't just any Friday dinner. It was supposed to mark something. We sat at a round table in a corner booth of the kind of steakhouse that used mood lighting to soften everything it touched. Menus, makeup, even intentions. The candle in the center of the table leaned to one side, wick curling, like it had been burned out and relit too many times. I was seated between my brother Evan and one of Dad's old colleagues, a man whose name I forgot immediately because he never really looked at me. The other guest, a woman in a cream blazer with pearls too large for her neck, only smiled when prompted. They weren't really guests, they were witnesses. Our waiter brought sparkling water in a bottle I couldn't pronounce, then took our orders with the kind of brisk professionalism that only comes from practiced indifference. I noticed Dad didn't order dessert in advance. That should have been my first clue. At 7:12 p.m. exactly, Dad's watch let out a soft beep. He tapped it once, like clearing an alert. I assumed he had somewhere to be. He always did. But then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim, sealed envelope. He didn't say a word. He simply slid it across the table, past the untouched buttered rolls and the plate of charred asparagus. Inside was a one-way ticket to Portland, leaving Monday, and a pre-filled application for a student visa, the kind usually used for overseas programs, but this one was marked domestic transfer. A name was signed in the space where mine should have gone. I looked up. My mother was straightening the crease on her napkin. Evan was fiddling with the salt shaker, suddenly very interested in the tablecloth. "This is a good step," he said quietly. "You always talked about doing your own thing." My own thing? I hadn't even applied to anything. I hadn't packed. I hadn't agreed. The steak arrived medium rare, and I didn't touch it. The man to my left chuckled and said something about bold moves for young women. The woman with the pearls said she'd heard Portland was artsy. Mom reached across the table and adjusted my scarf. Her fingers smelled like citrus hand sanitizer. She didn't meet my eyes. "You'll understand someday," she said gently. "It's important to stand on your own." When the bill came, no one offered cake. There was no toast, no cards, just a valet ticket and a nod toward the exit. Outside, the air was cool and still. The streetlights buzzed faintly. Evan loaded my duffel into the trunk of a waiting car. No one asked if I had plans. No one asked if I was okay. Dad shook my hand. Not a hug, not even a clap on the shoulder. "Everything's arranged," he said. "You just need to show up." I remember watching them disappear into another car, as if they'd finished some difficult chore, something unpleasant but necessary. I stood there under the orange glow of the parking lot lights, envelope pressed to my chest, trying to find words I'd never get to say. Inside, through the window, I saw the table being cleared. The candle had finally gone out. I wasn't running away. I was being erased, quietly, efficiently, and without witnesses. The first postcard came in September. It had a cartoon drawing of the Eiffel Tower and a line in bright blue cursive, "Paris looks good on you." I was sitting at the kitchen table, hunched over a chipped bowl of canned chicken noodle soup. The only light in the room flickered like it was about to give up, and I was too tired to fix it. I stared at the postcard for a full minute before turning it over. It was from my cousin Leah, written in her usual bubble handwriting. "So proud of you, heard you're loving France. Hope you're still sketching everything like you used to. XO. France? The closest thing I'd seen to Paris that year was a perfume ad taped to a laundromat vending machine. I hadn't been out of Oregon since the night I was celebrated and quietly sent away. I placed the postcard on the counter and reached for my laptop. Battery, 12%. The power cord had frayed a week ago. I jiggled it in the socket, got just enough juice to open my browser, and typed my mother's name into the search bar. It didn't take long. Her social media was still public. There it was, a photo of me at 16, cropped tightly, standing in front of a student art exhibit at a downtown Portland gallery. The caption read, "Our daughter, pursuing her dreams abroad, so proud of her acceptance into the Paris Fellowship." A handful of likes, a string of comments, heart emojis, praises, a few old church friends chiming in with, "She's always been gifted." I hadn't picked up a paintbrush in over a year. My stomach dropped. I scrolled further. More photos, more captions. Me, studying near the Seine, attending a writer's salon, even a blurry image that wasn't me at all. A girl with dark hair sitting on the steps of a museum I'd never seen in person. I clicked through in disbelief. They weren't just rewriting my story, they were broadcasting it. "Claire," Jules called from across the apartment, "I think your soup's boiling into the floor." I didn't answer. I clicked on an older post and noticed a document linked in a comment. A viewer had asked for more information about the program. My mother had uploaded a PDF. The scholarship name sounded official. The header had a crest, a slogan in Latin, and my full name typed beneath in serif font. But the details were wrong. The school listed didn't even offer fellowships that year. The awards were fabricated, including one for National Cultural Exchange honoree, which I knew didn't exist. And then, at the bottom, was a sender tag, Richard.Whitmore, West Stream Logistics, call me Jules. Wandered over, leaned in, squinted at the screen. She started reading out loud, but stopped halfway through the first paragraph. Did they really send this? I didn't speak. I didn't blink. The microwave beeped behind us. No one moved to silence it. For months, I had thought maybe they were just too proud to call, too embarrassed by how things had ended. But this wasn't silence. It was strategy. Mom used to say, people don't question what they want to believe. She was right. Nobody had. Not Leah, not the church, not the friends leaving congratulatory comments. They hadn't just let me go. They'd built a better version of me, one they could point to at fundraisers and conferences. A daughter abroad, ambitious, brilliant, willfully distant. And it worked, because it made them look like the kind of family you could trust with money. I looked back at the screen, at the photos, the awards, the smiling faces, and in that moment something settled deep in my chest, heavy but sharp. I wasn't missing. I had been replaced, perfectly, neatly, intentionally. I didn't set out to stay in aviation. I just needed a job with health insurance and shifts that didn't overlap with my night classes. The hiring sign at Portland International hung slightly crooked in the window of the employee entrance, and I took it as a kind of omen. This wouldn't last. My first day started at 4:40 a.m., scrubbing armrests with citrus wipes and folding up barf bags for the regional commuter line. My badge read Claire W. in faded font, and my shoes were too thin for the tarmac's early chill. I worked odd shifts, said little, and kept my head down. But I listened. That was the first thing aviation taught me, how much people say when they think you're background noise. Miguel, my supervisor, didn't smile much. He barked codes into his radio and moved with the tired grace of someone who never got enough sleep. But he was fair. When he noticed I'd restocked 2 whole cabins in under 10 minutes, he just said, "Efficient," and moved on. That was his version of praise. Dee, one of the mechanics, would smoke clove cigarettes near the maintenance lockers and talk like everything was already doomed. "See that gate?" she said one afternoon, pointing with her wrench. "Flight's gonna get delayed. Fuel discrepancy, they'll say. Truth? We've got 1 too many planes and not enough people to check 'em." She shrugged. "Don't repeat that, but pay attention." And I did. I started noticing things, patterns. Which gates consistently ran late? Which supervisors snapped under pressure? Which planes were pulled for routine maintenance right before peak holiday weekends? Every inconsistency told me something. Every misstep had a story behind it. Then one night in July, just after 10 o'clock p.m., a storm rolled in from the east, and flights were backed up for hours. Most passengers grew restless, but one older man remained oddly calm. His flight to Atlanta had been delayed, then rerouted, and he stood near the gate, hands in his pockets, watching. I walked by with a stack of blankets. He stopped me. "You work here long?" he asked, not unkindly. "Just over a year," I said. "What's the real reason for the delay?" I hesitated, then answered, "Operational backlog from Denver. There's a chain effect when the crew gets held up. The weather doesn't help, but it's not the full reason." He raised an eyebrow. "You always speak this directly?" I shrugged. "No point pretending passengers don't see through the script." He nodded once and thanked me. Then he was gone. A week later, I got an email. No signature in the subject line, just the word, "Coffee?" I almost deleted it. But something about the way the message was phrased, short, clear, expectant, stuck with me. The sender's name rang a distant bell. Robert Langston. I Googled him just to be sure. Executive Vice President, Delta America Holdings. I didn't know what he saw in me that night, but I knew what I saw in him, an open door, and for the first time in years, the faint outline of a way through. The closer I got to the truth, the more I realized it wasn't buried. It was polished, lit from the right angle, and wrapped in brochures that smelled like fresh ink and false hope. By 2022, I was living in Seattle again, though not in the kind of zip code that screamed success. My apartment was 2 blocks from an overpass and 3 floors above a bakery that never opened before 10. But it was mine. And more importantly, it was close enough to downtown to attend the networking events no one ever really admits matter. Robert once told me, "There's no such thing as neutral presence in a room. You're either seen or used." He didn't hand out flattery, so I took that line seriously. So I bought the blazer, the one that looked just expensive enough but came from a discount rack in Tacoma. I printed business cards under a pseudonym, Claire Walker, and listed my affiliation as Operations Strategy Consultant. No one ever asked what that meant. At conferences, I nodded through panels on growth capital, ESG branding, and supply chain consolidation. I smiled at interns passing around lanyards and half listened to CEOs mispronounce acronyms. And I took notes. Not just from the stage, but from the sidebars. The elevator mutters, the poorly concealed frustrations of mid-tier investors wondering where the dividends had gone. Whitmore Aviation still had a table at these events. Still paid for booths, glossy banners, and branded water bottles with QR codes. Still had Evan shaking hands in a tailored gray suit and a name badge that said, "Vision in Motion." He posed for photos next to scaled jet models and talked about resilience, like it was something you could fundraise on. What those photos didn't show was the quiet panic just beneath the surface. Vendors waiting for late payments, retainers shrinking, a revolving door of advisors listed on the website but unreachable by phone. It didn't take much to confirm it. Public filings, lightly coded loan restructuring agreements, and just enough whisper from mutual contacts told the real story. The company was bleeding, just not fast enough to make it obvious. So I started buying. Not outright, of course. That would have been too easy and too visible. Instead, I used a series of shell LLCs, all registered through a firm Langston had introduced me to back when I still wore airport uniforms. Small investors who wanted out quietly were surprisingly easy to find. Everyone likes to exit gracefully when they think no one's watching. Each stake I purchased was modest on its own, a fraction of a percent here, a quiet conversion of voting rights there. By the time the ownership threshold shifted, no one had noticed the ground beneath them had moved. Langston kept his distance, as always. We met at a cafe once a month. Black coffee, receipts folded twice, conversation spare but precise. "You're almost there," he said in January, eyes scanning a spreadsheet I'd slid across the table. "Just don't blink when they start squirming." By February, I attended a private mid-tier investor roundtable under my real name. No aliases, no borrowed titles. My voice didn't shake when I introduced myself. The room wasn't full of powerful people, just wary ones, and I knew how to speak their language now. Later that night, I saw a new photo posted on the company's LinkedIn page. Evan stood at a podium, smiling like he'd just won something that mattered. Behind him, a screen read, "Our family stands united." The comments were full of praise. A few people reposted it with captions like, "A legacy worth believing in." I stared at the image for a long moment, then saved it. Not to frame, just to remember. The merger paperwork was signed 2 weeks later, under a name no one in the company boardroom had mentioned in years. Claire Whitmore. No pseudonyms this time. No borrowed stories. I didn't call anyone. I didn't announce anything. I just filed the papers and walked out of the attorney's office with a cup of lukewarm coffee and a confirmation email in my inbox. The spring gala was scheduled for late March. Invitations had already been mailed. Evan would take the stage again, reciting the same lines, the same promises. He didn't know yet, but I did. And I'd be there. They rehearsed every word, every toast, every gesture, even the pauses timed to match the lighting cues. But they didn't rehearse for me. I wasn't supposed to be there. The gala was called Legacy in Flight. The invitation featured a jet silhouette streaking across a golden skyline, superimposed with the Whitmore crest and a quote about family values. I saw it online 2 weeks earlier. Public. Proud. I arrived at the hotel early. Not early enough to help set up, but early enough to see the final touches. Table settings adjusted by staff in black ties, floral centerpieces craned into position, and a tower of champagne glasses stacked so carefully it looked like a monument to ambition. No one looked twice when I entered. The badge I wore said Strategic Advisor, and I blended in easily among the polished consultants and secondary sponsors. I wore navy. My hair was pulled back. Clean lines, quiet confidence, not invisible, just not expected. Evan took the stage 45 minutes into the program. He looked taller than I remembered, or maybe just thinner. The suit was perfect, as always. His voice had that blend of humility and authority that photographs well. He thanked our parents for their vision, their sacrifices, their example. He gestured toward them as the crowd clapped. Margaret's smile just wide enough, Richard's chin tilted in practiced gravity. From afar, they looked like a family, one you could trust, one you might invest in. I watched from near the service doors, hands loose at my sides. When the lights shifted for the partner recognition segment, there was a brief pause. I knew that pause. It wasn't part of the script. I'd seen the version they practiced in a leaked prep document. This wasn't it. The MC's voice trembled just slightly when he read the name. "Please welcome our newest strategic partner, Ms. Claire Whitmore." It took them a second to register it. Then came the heads turning. Margaret's hand froze mid-clap. Richard stiffened. Evan's smile flickered, dropped, then returned, strained now. I walked through the center aisle. Each step landed sharp against the marble floor, and the hush that followed felt deeper than silence. I didn't rush. I didn't scan the crowd. I walked like I'd done this before. At the podium, I didn't clear my throat. I didn't tap the mic. I simply spoke. Thank you for being here tonight. Before we continue, I believe there's one more story worth telling. The screen behind me lit up. The first image appeared, grainy security footage from the airport, a teenage girl holding a suitcase under a flickering departure sign. Her face half turned, familiar, indistinct. Then came the slides. Copies of scholarship applications filed with my name, but written by someone else. Tax filings, emails, the caption of a photo posted online. So proud of our daughter abroad. My voice narrated calmly, clinically. These documents tell a different version of the story you've heard, I said. Not one of ambition, but of absence. Not one of support, but of substitution. The crowd didn't move. I showed board filings, financial reports, letters from mid-tier investors who had quietly divested without fanfare, images of the company's dwindling assets under the facade of growth, and then the final slide, a legal notice, transfer of controlling interest, Claire Whitmore, majority stakeholder. There was no gasp, just stillness. One woman dropped her napkin, a wine glass tilted, catching the light before settling against the tablecloth. I looked at Margaret. She'd gone pale. Richard's hand gripped the edge of the table. Evan stared at the screen like it had betrayed him. I didn't smile. I didn't scold. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't come here for applause, I said softly. I came to end the story that was written without me. And then I stepped back, leaving the microphone untouched. The MC didn't return. The music didn't resume. For a moment, the room simply held. I turned from the stage, not hurriedly, not defiantly, just done. I didn't speak for revenge. I spoke so the lie would end. That's all I ever needed. I slipped out through the side exit, same as I had entered. No spotlights, no announcements, just the soft thud of the door closing behind me and the faint murmur of a room still struggling to process what it had seen. The night air met me like an old friend, damp, cool, and smelling of cedar and fading roses. Somewhere inside, the string quartet had resumed, though quieter now. They were playing a piece I used to know. It didn't matter which one. I stood for a moment near the valet stand, watching as the city lights flickered in the distance. My heels clicked once against the pavement before I stepped onto the asphalt path that led toward the back lot. I didn't need directions. I remembered the layout. I'd studied it long ago in a different kind of preparation. Behind me, the sounds of champagne glasses clinking had died out. No one followed, but someone waited. Robert was there, standing by the curve of a silver sedan, hands in his coat pockets. He didn't greet me, just nodded and handed me a folded program from the event. My name was printed on the back, last in the list, under the heading Strategic Transition. "I think you paid for this," he said quietly with a half smile. No advice this time, no next step, just acknowledgement. I took the program, slid it into my coat. "You taught me more than you meant to," I told him. He didn't answer, just gave me that small, approving look he reserved for moments when words weren't necessary. Then he turned and walked toward his own car, disappearing into the gentle hum of engines starting and tires rolling. I continued toward mine. Near the edge of the lot, just before the gravel gave way to concrete, I saw him. Evan stood near the valet line, alone. His jacket was open, one hand stuffed in a pocket, the other resting on the trunk of a car that wasn't his. He didn't speak, didn't move, just looked at me. Not with anger, not even regret, just a kind of stunned silence, like he still didn't know which version of me had walked out onto that stage. I met his eyes. For a second, I considered walking over, saying something. But I didn't have anything left that needed saying. Instead, I gave him a single, small nod. Not of forgiveness, not of farewell, just of recognition. That we had once shared a name, a childhood, a story. And that now, finally, we didn't. He didn't nod back. I opened my car door. The seat was still warm from the engine left idling. The interior smelled faintly of peppermint and paper. A receipt from the coffee I'd never finished still tucked into the console. My phone buzzed once. The screen lit up. Mom, missed call. No message, no voicemail. Just the number that used to mean home. I let it fade, then slid the phone into the glove compartment. Shut it gently. Some ghosts don't need exorcism, just distance. I pulled onto the road without turning on the radio. The hills of Portland stretched ahead, dark against the stars, familiar in their quiet way. No destination felt urgent anymore. No voice in my head demanded explanation. The lie had ended, and I was still here. I didn't need applause, and I didn't wait for permission. Walking away that night, I felt something I hadn't in years. Quiet, steady peace. Sometimes the hardest part isn't being forgotten, it's being rewritten. But in the end, the truth has a way of finding its voice, even if it speaks in whispers. Family can lift us, but when it doesn't, we're still allowed to rise, on our own terms, in our own time. If this story touched something in you, I hope you'll share your thoughts. Maybe someone else out there needs the reminder too. You were never invisible. You were just waiting to be seen.